The glass shattered against the wall, missing Ujide's head by inches. She stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her heart hammering as wine dripped down the cream-colored paint she'd chosen so carefully 3 years ago. Ujide stood across from her, his face twisted in rage, chest heaving like he'd just run a marathon. "You embarrassed me," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "In front of my colleagues. At my company dinner. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ujide's hands trembled as she tried to process what was happening. All she'd done was laugh at a joke. A simple joke that everyone at the table had been laughing at. But somehow, in Ujide's mind, her laughter had been too loud, too attention-seeking, too much about her and not enough about him. "Ujide, I was just what? Just trying to make yourself the center of attention. Just trying to show everyone how funny and charming you are while making me look like nothing." This wasn't the man she'd married. Or maybe it was, and she'd been too blinded by love to see it. Ujide's mind raced back to their wedding day 4 years ago, to the promises they'd made, to the life she'd imagined they would build together. None of those dreams had included standing in her own kitchen, terrified of her husband. If you're watching this and you've ever felt trapped, misunderstood, or like you're losing yourself in a relationship, please hit that subscribe button and stay with me. This is Ujide's story, and it might just be yours too. Comment below if you've ever experienced gaslighting, because what I'm about to share will show you that you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not crazy. 3 months earlier, Ujide had been sitting in her therapist's office, Dr. Okonkwo, trying to explain why she felt like she was drowning. "I don't understand what's wrong with me," Ujide said, twisting a tissue in her hands. "I have everything I'm supposed to want. A successful husband, a beautiful home, financial security. But I feel like I'm disappearing." Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about the typical day with Ujide." Ujide took a breath. "Well, this morning I made him breakfast. Scrambled eggs, just how he likes them. But apparently, they were too runny. He didn't say it directly, of course. He just pushed the plate away and said, 'I guess I grabbed something on the way to work.' Then he looked at me with this expression, like I deliberately tried to ruin his morning. How did that make you feel? Like a failure? Like I can't do anything right?" And then I spent the next 2 hours wondering if the eggs really were too runny, or if I was being too sensitive, or if maybe I'd done something else to upset him that I wasn't even aware of. Dr. Okonkwo made a note. "Ujide, have you heard the term narcissistic personality disorder?" Ujide had heard the term, of course. Everyone threw it around these days. But narcissists were obvious, weren't they? They were loud, boastful, clearly self-absorbed. Ujide wasn't like that. He was charming, successful, beloved by everyone who knew him. He volunteered at the youth center. He donated to charity. He was the man everyone wanted to be friends with. "Ujide isn't a narcissist," Ujide said automatically. "He's just under a lot of pressure at work. And I know I can be difficult sometimes. My mother always said I was too emotional." Dr. Okonkwo's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes shifted. "What makes you think you're difficult?" Ujide opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. What did make her difficult? She couldn't actually think of specific examples. It was just something she knew about herself, a truth that had been reinforced so many times it had become fact. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "I just am." The session had planted a seed, though. A tiny crack in the foundation of Ujide's understanding of her marriage. She'd gone home that day and started paying attention. Really paying attention. That evening, Ujide had come home from work in a good mood. He'd gotten praise from his boss, closed a big deal, received validation that filled him up and made him expansive and generous. "Baby, you look beautiful," he'd said, pulling her into his arms. "Have I told you today how lucky I am to have you?" Ujide had melted into his embrace, relief flooding through her. This was the Chidi she'd fallen in love with. The man who made her feel cherished and special unseen. They'd had a wonderful evening. Chidi had been attentive, asking about her day, laughing at her stories, making love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. This was what marriage was supposed to be, she thought as she fell asleep in his arms. But the next morning, everything changed. Ujide had woken up early to make Chidi his favorite breakfast, yam and eggs with pepper sauce. She'd been humming to herself, still glowing from the night before, when he walked into the kitchen. His face was cold. Distant. Like a stranger had replaced the man who'd held her just hours ago. "Good morning," she'd said brightly, setting his plate on the table. Chidi looked at the food, then at her, his expression unreadable. "You know I have an important meeting this morning." "I know. That's why I made you a good breakfast to start your day." "A good breakfast." He repeated the word slowly, as if she'd said something absurd. "Ujide, when I have important meetings, I eat light. You know this. But you never listen. You just do whatever you want without thinking about what I need." Ujide felt her chest tighten. "I'm sorry, I thought." "That's the problem. You think. You assume. You never actually pay attention to me." He picked up his briefcase. "I'll grab something on the way." He'd left her standing there, the breakfast she'd made with love growing cold on the table, wondering how she'd gotten it so wrong again. Wondering why she couldn't seem to do anything right. That was 2 months ago. Since then, things had gotten progressively worse. The good days became fewer and farther between. The criticism became sharper. The silence became longer. And then came the company dinner. The night everything shattered, literally and figuratively. Ujide had been excited about the dinner. It was at an upscale restaurant downtown, and all of Chidi's colleagues would be there with their partners. She'd bought a new dress, a deep blue that Chidi had once said made her eyes sparkle. She'd spent hours getting ready, wanting to make him proud. At first, everything seemed fine. Chidi introduced her to his colleagues, his hand warm on the small of her back. He smiled at her, that charming smile that had first captured her heart 5 years ago at her cousin's wedding. "This is my wife, Ujide," he'd said to his boss, Mr. Adeyemi. "Isn't she beautiful?" Ujide had felt herself relax. Maybe tonight would be good. Maybe she'd been overthinking everything. Maybe Dr. Okonkwo was wrong about the narcissism thing. They'd sat down to dinner, and the conversation flowed easily. Mr. Adeyemi's wife, Folek, was funny and warm, telling stories about their recent trip to Dubai. At one point, she told a joke about her husband's terrible sense of direction, and everyone at the table laughed. "I swear, if I wasn't there to guide him, he'd still be wandering around the spice market," Folek said, laughing. Mr. Adeyemi grinned good-naturedly. "It's true. My wife is the navigator in our family." Someone asked Ujide if Chidi was the same way, and without thinking, she laughed and said, "Oh yes. Last month, Chidi used the GPS to get to a restaurant we've been to 100 times. I kept telling him it was the next street, but he insisted the GPS knew better. We ended up 15 minutes late because it took us through construction." Everyone laughed. It was a harmless story, a funny anecdote about a common quirk. Folek nodded knowingly, and Mr. Adeyemi chuckled, saying something about men and their pride with technology. But when Ujide looked at Chidi, her blood ran cold. His smile was frozen on his face, but his eyes were dead. Flat. Rage simmered beneath the surface like a pot about to boil over. "Excuse us," Chidi said smoothly, standing up. His hand gripped Ujide's arm, too tight. "We need to get something from the car." Once they were outside, away from prying eyes, his mask dropped. "What the hell was that?" he hissed. "What?" "I was just..." You were making me look like an idiot. In front of my boss. In front of everyone. Chidi, it was just a funny story. Everyone was sharing. Everyone was not sharing stories about their husband's incompetence. But you were. You just had to make yourself seem superior, didn't you? Had to get those laughs at my expense. Ujide's heart was racing. That's not what I was doing. I was just participating in the conversation. Folake was telling the same kind of stories about Mr. Adeyemi. Folake has been married for 20 years. She's earned the right to tease her husband. You've been married to me for 4 years and you still don't know how to act in public. The unfairness of it took Ujide's breath away. But she apologized anyway. She always apologized. They'd gone back inside, and Ujide had spent the rest of the evening in silence, afraid to say anything that might set Chidi off again. She watched the other couples laughing and talking, saw the easy affection between them, and felt like she was watching life from behind glass. When they got home, she'd hoped maybe they could talk about it. Maybe she could explain that she hadn't meant to hurt him. But before she could say anything, Chidi had grabbed a wine glass and thrown it at the wall. Which brought them to this moment. Standing in their kitchen, Ujide's ears ringing with the sound of breaking glass, her husband looking at her like she was his enemy. "I'm sorry," she whispered, because what else could she say? "You're always sorry," Chidi said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But you never change. You keep doing things to humiliate me, to undermine me, to make me look small. And then you stand there with those innocent eyes and say you're sorry. I don't mean to humiliate you. I would never. But you do. That's the thing, Ujide. You do it without even trying. Maybe that's just who you are. Selfish. Thoughtless. Unable to think about anyone but yourself." The words hit like physical blows. Ujide felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. If she cried, he'd accuse her of being manipulative, of trying to make him feel guilty for her mistakes. "I think," Chidi said, his voice suddenly calm, "that you should sleep in the guest room tonight. I need space from you." He walked past her, leaving her standing in the kitchen with wine dripping down the wall and her heart breaking in her chest. That night, lying alone in the guest room, Ujide made a decision. She pulled out her phone and started searching. Narcissistic personality disorder. Signs of narcissistic abuse. How to know if your husband is a narcissist. The articles she found could have been written about her life. The love bombing in the beginning. The gradual erosion of her self-esteem. The constant criticism disguised as concern. The way Chidi could be charming and wonderful to everyone else but cold and cruel to her behind closed doors. The impossible standards that kept changing so she could never get it right. The way he never took responsibility for anything, always making everything her fault. One article talked about something called DAVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She read the description with shaking hands. It was exactly what Chidi did. Every single time. She would bring up something that hurt her, and somehow by the end of the conversation, she would be the one apologizing for hurting him. Another article listed signs of covert narcissism. Unlike the obvious narcissist everyone could spot, covert narcissists were subtle. They played the victim. They were often seen as nice, charming people by everyone else. They saved their cruelty for their intimate partners, the people who were supposed to be closest to them. Ujide read until her eyes burned and her phone battery was nearly dead. And with each article, each checklist, each survivor story, the truth became clearer and more painful. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't difficult. She wasn't the problem. Her husband was a narcissist. The next morning, Ujide called her best friend, Ngozi. They'd been friends since university, but over the past few years, Ujide had seen less and less of her. Chidi always had a reason why she couldn't meet up with Ngozi. She was a bad influence. She was jealous of their relationship. She was trying to create problems between them. But now, Ujide needed her friend more than ever. They met at a small cafe across town, far from anywhere Chidi might see them. Ngozi took one look at Ujide's face and pulled her into a tight hug. "Talk to me," Ngozi said once they were seated. "What's going on?" Ujide opened her mouth and everything came pouring out. The dinner. The thrown glass. The years of walking on eggshells. The constant fear of doing something wrong. The way she'd lost herself trying to be the perfect wife for a man who would never be satisfied. Ngozi listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "Ujide," she finally said, reaching across the table to grip her friend's hand. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know. Maybe always. But it's gotten worse. Or maybe I'm just finally seeing it clearly. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you reach out?" Ujide felt shame wash over her. "Because I thought it was my fault. Because Chidi made me believe I was the problem. And because he made me think you wouldn't understand, that you'd judge me or try to break us up because you were jealous." Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Ujide. I would never. You're my sister. And I have to tell you something. I've been worried about you for a long time." "What do you mean?" "You changed after you married Chidi. You became smaller. Quieter. You stopped sharing your opinions. You apologized for everything. You flinched when your phone rang. I tried to talk to you about it once, remember? About 2 years ago." Ujide did remember. Ngozi had gently suggested that Chidi seemed very controlling, that their relationship didn't seem balanced. And Ujide had gotten defensive, insisted everything was fine, accused Ngozi of not being happy for her. They hadn't spoken for 3 months after that. "That was him," Ujide whispered. "He'd been telling me that you were trying to poison me against him. That you were jealous because you didn't have a successful husband. And when you brought it up, I believed him. I chose him over you." "Hey," Ngozi squeezed her hand. "He manipulated you. That's what people like him do. They isolate you from everyone who might see through them. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. What do you need?" What did she need? Ujide hadn't even allowed herself to think about it. What she needed. What she wanted. For so long, everything had been about what Chidi needed, what Chidi wanted, how to keep Chidi happy. "I need to leave him," she said, and saying the words out loud made them real and terrifying and somehow liberating all at once. Ngozi nodded. "Okay. Then we'll figure out how to do that safely." Safely. The word sent a chill through Ujide. "You think he'd hurt me? I think he threw a glass at your head. I think he spent years destroying your self-esteem. I think narcissists are most dangerous when they lose control, and you leaving would be the ultimate loss of control." Ngozi pulled out her phone. "My cousin is a lawyer. She handles divorce cases and she's dealt with situations like this before. Let me call her." Over the next week, Ujide met with Ngozi's cousin, Adiz, a sharp-eyed woman who didn't sugarcoat anything. "Document everything," Adiz had said in their first meeting. "Take photos of any damage. Keep a journal of incidents. If he texts or emails anything abusive, save it. If it's safe, record conversations. We need to build a case. A case. I just want a divorce. And he's going to fight you every step of the way. Not because he loves you or wants to save the marriage, but because you living is a rejection of him. Narcissists don't handle rejection well. He'll try to punish you. He'll try to paint you as crazy or unstable. He might try to turn people against you. We need to be prepared." Adiz was right. When Ujide finally worked up the courage to tell Chidi she wanted a divorce, his reaction was unlike anything she'd seen before. At first, he'd laughed. Actually laughed. You want a divorce? You? Yes, Ujide said, trying to keep her voice steady. They were in the living room, and she'd deliberately chosen a Saturday afternoon when Chidi was usually in a good mood after his golf game. That's ridiculous. You're being dramatic again. Whatever's bothering you, we can fix it. I don't want to fix it. I want to end it. The marriage isn't working. Chidi's expression shifted from amusement to confusion to something darker. The marriage isn't working. Ujide, I've given you everything. A beautiful home. Financial security. My name. My status. And you're telling me the marriage isn't working. We are not happy. I'm not happy. You're not happy. He repeated the words like they were foreign to him. Do you have any idea how many women would kill to be in your position? To have a husband like me? Then maybe you should be with one of them. The words hung in the air between them. Chidi's face went white, then red. You're ungrateful, do you know what I've put up with? Your mood swings, your sensitivity, your constant need for reassurance. I've been patient with you, Ujide. I've tried to help you become better. And this is how you repay me. I don't need you to make me better. There's nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong with you. Chidi's laugh was cruel. You're delusional. You're emotionally unstable. You can't maintain friendships. You can't even cook a meal properly half the time. Without me, you'd be nothing. You'd fall apart. Ujide felt the old familiar pull to believe him, to doubt herself. But she'd been preparing for this. She'd been working with Dr. Okonkwo. She'd been reading and learning and rebuilding the parts of herself that Chidi had systematically destroyed. I'm filing for divorce, she said quietly. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Chidi went very still. You spoke to a lawyer? Behind my back? You've been planning this? Yes. Who put this idea in your head? Your therapist. Ngozi. They've been poisoning you against me, haven't they? Filling your head with lies. Nobody put anything in my head. I made this decision myself. No. Chidi stood up, and despite herself, Ujide took a step back. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to throw away our marriage because you've let other people manipulate you. I won't allow it. You don't have a choice. I have every choice. I'm your husband. This is my house. These are my decisions to make. Actually, Ujide said, pulling out a folder from her bag, according to the law, this is our house. I'm entitled to half of everything. And I've already moved money into a separate account. She'd done it the day before, with Adi's help. Taken half of their savings and opened a new account at a different bank. It was legally her right, but she'd felt like a criminal doing it. Chidi snatched the folder from her hands. As he read through the papers, his expression morphed from shock to fury. You've been planning this for weeks. You've been lying to me. Pretending everything was fine while you plotted behind my back. I needed to protect myself. Protect yourself. From me. I've never laid a hand on you. I've given you everything and you act like I'm some kind of monster. You threw a glass at my head. I threw a glass at the wall. Stop being dramatic. You belittle me. You criticize everything I do. You make me feel worthless. I don't make you feel anything. You choose to feel worthless because you know, deep down, that you're not living up to your potential. I've tried to push you to be better, and you've resisted me at every turn. And there it was. Davo in action. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Ujide almost laughed at how textbook it was. I'm done, she said. I'm staying with a friend until we finalize the divorce. I'll come back for my things next week. If you walk out that door, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. If I stay, I'm making an even bigger one. She picked up the small bag she'd packed earlier and walked to the door. Her hands were shaking but her step was steady. Ujide. Chidi's voice stopped her at the threshold. When she turned, his face had transformed. The anger was gone, replaced by tears. Baby, please. Don't do this. I love you. I know I'm not perfect, but we can work on this together. Please don't give up on us. It was the voice from their early days. The voice that had made her feel like the most special woman in the world. The voice that had promised her forever. For a moment, just a moment, she wavered. Maybe she was being too harsh. Maybe he really could change. Maybe. No. She'd read about this too. The cycle of abuse. Tension, explosion, reconciliation, calm. Round and round forever unless someone got off the ride. Goodbye, Chidi. She walked out of the house and didn't look back. The next few months were the hardest of Ujide's life. Chidi didn't make the divorce easy. He contested everything. He tried to claim she'd stolen money from him. He told everyone who would listen that Ujide had had a mental breakdown, that she was being manipulated by toxic friends, that he was the victim of a wife who'd stopped taking her medication. The worst part was how many people believed him. Chidi's family called Ujide selfish and ungrateful. Some of their mutual friends took his side. Her own mother suggested she was giving up too easily, that marriage required sacrifice and patience. I've been patient for 4 years, Ujide told her mother over a tense phone call. How much more patient should I be? Marriage is hard work, Ujide. Your father and I had difficult times too, but we worked through them. Did Daddy ever throw things at you? Did he make you feel like everything you did was wrong? Did he isolate you from your friends and make you doubt your own reality? Her mother was silent for a long moment. Chidi is a good man. He provides for you. He's respected in the community. He's a narcissist, Mama. And he's been abusing me for years. Don't use those psychology terms. You young people throw those words around too easily. Just because a man has standards doesn't mean he's abusive. Ujide felt her heart crack a little. Even her own mother couldn't see it. Or wouldn't see it. But Ngozi saw it. Adis saw it. Dr. Okonkwo saw it. And slowly, Ujide started to surround herself with people who could see her clearly, who validated her experience, who reminded her that she wasn't crazy. She moved into a small apartment across town. It was a fraction of the size of the house she'd shared with Chidi, but it was hers. She could paint the walls any color she wanted. She could cook whatever she felt like eating. She could laugh as loudly as she wanted without worrying about someone's reaction. She started rediscovering herself. The woman she'd been before Chidi. The woman she was becoming after him. She took up painting again, something she'd loved in university but had stopped because Chidi said it was a waste of time. She joined a book club. She went out dancing with Ngozi. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, she healed. 6 months after she left, the divorce was finalized. Ujide walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than she had in years. Chidi had glared at her across the courtroom, his mask finally dropped completely. No more charming smiles. No more playing the victim. Just pure hatred for the woman who had dared to reject him. Adis walked out with her, professionally satisfied with the settlement they'd achieved. You did it. We did it, Ujide corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Without Ngozi. Without Dr. Okonkwo. No, Adis said firmly. You could have. It would have been harder, it would have taken longer, but you would have found your way out eventually. Because despite everything he did to break you, you never fully broke. Something in you knew you deserved better. Later that evening, Ujide sat in her small apartment with Ngozi, drinking wine and eating takeout. How does it feel? Ngozi asked. Weird. Scary. Free. Ujide took a sip of her wine. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Chidi to show up or for something to go wrong. That's trauma talking. He conditioned you to always be waiting for the next explosion. It's going to take time to unlearn that. I know. Dr. Okonkwo says the same thing. Ujide looked at her friend. I'm sorry, Ngozi. For all the years I pushed you away. For believing his lies about you. Stop apologizing. You were in survival mode. You did what you had to do to cope with an impossible situation. Ngozi reached over and squeezed her hand. What matters is that you're here now. You're free now. Free. The word still felt strange to Ujide. For so long, she'd been bound by Chidi's moods, his needs, his version of reality. Learning to trust her own perceptions again was a daily practice. But she was learning. Some days were harder than others. Sometimes she'd catch herself about to apologize for something that didn't need an apology. Sometimes she'd hold back an opinion, afraid of how it would be received. Sometimes she'd make a small decision, like what to eat for dinner, and feel anxiety creep in, as if Chidi were still there to criticize her choice. But other days, she'd wake up and make whatever breakfast she wanted without worrying if it was too runny or too dry. She'd wear whatever she felt like wearing without checking to see if it was appropriate enough. She'd laugh loudly at a joke without fear of consequences. A year after leaving Chidi, Ujide ran into Folek at a grocery store. Mr. Adeyemi's wife. The woman whose joke had set off the chain of events that led to the broken glass and Ujide's awakening. Ujide. Folek said warmly, pulling her into a hug. How are you? I heard about the divorce. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, Ujide said. It was the best decision I ever made. Folek studied her face. You look different. Happier. I am happier. Much happier. They chatted for a few minutes, and then Folek said something that made Ujide's heart stop. You know, after that company dinner, my husband told me he was worried about you. He said Chidi's reaction outside was extremely strange and concerning. He wanted to say something but didn't want to overstep. He noticed. Of course he noticed. We both did. The way Chidi spoke to you, the way you went silent for the rest of the evening. My husband has known Chidi for years, and he said he'd always suspected something was off about him. Too smooth. Too perfect. He said men like that are usually hiding something dark. Ujide felt tears prick her eyes. All that time, she thought no one could see what was happening. She thought Chidi's mask was impenetrable. But people had noticed. They just hadn't known what to do. I wish someone had said something, Ujide admitted. Would you have believed us if we had? Folek asked gently. Ujide thought about it. Honestly. Probably not. Not until I was ready to see it myself. Exactly. These things, we have to figure them out in our own time. But I'm glad you got out. And I'm glad you're healing. As Ujide drove home from the grocery store, she thought about all the women who might be where she'd been a year ago. Confused. Doubting themselves. Thinking they were the problem. Trapped in relationships with people who wore masks in public and showed their true faces only in private. She thought about everything she'd learned. About covert narcissism. About gaslighting and Davo and trauma bonding. About how abuse didn't always look like physical violence. Sometimes it looked like criticism disguised as concern. Sometimes it looked like charm that could flip to cruelty in an instant. Sometimes it looked like a perfect husband who made his wife feel like she was losing her mind. That evening, Ujide did something she'd been thinking about for months. She opened her laptop and started a blog. She called it Behind the Mask, One Woman's Journey Out of Narcissistic Abuse. Her first post was simple. She told her story, without naming names, without unnecessary details. Just the truth of what she'd lived through and how she'd found her way out. She ended it with a message to anyone who might be reading and recognizing themselves in her words. If you're reading this and something resonates, trust that feeling. Trust yourself. Your reality is valid. Your pain is real. You're not too sensitive. You're not too difficult. You're not crazy. And you deserve better. You deserve to be loved without conditions, without criticism, without constant fear. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to be yourself. And you deserve to be free. She hit publish and closed her laptop, not expecting anyone to read it. But they did. Within a week, her post had been shared hundreds of times. Women commented with their own stories. Some were still trapped. Some had gotten out. Some were in the process of leaving. They thanked her for putting words to experiences they thought were unique to them. Ujide responded to every single comment. She shared resources. She offered support. She connected women with lawyers and therapists and support groups. She became part of a community of survivors who understood what she'd been through because they'd been through it too. 2 years after leaving Ujide, Ujide stood in front of a small audience at a women's empowerment conference. She'd been invited to speak about her experience with narcissistic abuse and recovery. Her hands shook slightly as she held the microphone, but her voice was steady. She told her story. The love bombing. The gradual erosion. The moment of the thrown glass. The difficult decision to leave. The painful journey of healing. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. But what moved her most were the women who came up to her afterward with tears in their eyes, whispering, "Thank you. I thought I was alone. I thought it was just me." It's not just you, Ujide told each one. It's never just you. If you've made it this far in Ujide's story, I want you to know something. Whether you're currently in a relationship like this, whether you've escaped one, or whether you're trying to understand what a friend or family member is going through, your experience matters. Your feelings are valid. And healing is possible. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, or if you're comfortable, your own experience. Let's build a community of survivors who lift each other up. And please, hit that like button and subscribe so we can continue sharing these important stories. You never know who might need to hear them. 3 years after leaving Ujide, Ujide received an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Kemi. She introduced herself as Ujide's new girlfriend and asked if they could meet. Ujide's first instinct was to delete the email. She'd built a new life. She'd healed. She didn't want anything to do with Ujide, even indirectly. But something in the woman's message made her pause. There was a desperation in the words. A familiar confusion. They met at the same cafe where Ujide had first confessed everything to Ngozi. Kemi was young, probably mid-20s, beautiful and polished. She looked like Ujide had looked when she'd first started dating Ujide. Full of hope and light and trust. "Thank you for meeting me," Kemi said, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. "I know this is strange. But I didn't know who else to talk to. What's going on?" Kemi took a breath. "Ujide is wonderful. Most of the time. He's charming and successful and everyone loves him. But sometimes, when we're alone, he's different. He criticizes me. Little things at first. The way I laugh. The clothes I wear. How I talk to other people. And when I get upset, he tells me I'm being too sensitive. That he's trying to help me improve. That I should be grateful he cares enough to give me feedback." Ujide's chest tightened. It was like listening to a recording of her younger self. "Last week," Kemi continued, her voice dropping, "we were at dinner with his friends. I told a story about something funny that happened at my job. Everyone laughed. But on the way home, Ujide was furious. He said I'd embarrassed him. That I'd made him look bad. I don't understand what I did wrong. I was just participating in the conversation like everyone else. You didn't do anything wrong, Ujide said quietly. Then why is he so angry? Why does he make me feel like everything I do is wrong? Because that's what he does. It's not about you. It was never about you. Kemi's eyes filled with tears. I found your blog. I've been reading it for weeks. And I kept thinking, this sounds like Ujide. But he's not like that all the time. Most of the time he's amazing. And when he's angry, I think maybe I really did do something wrong. Maybe I'm too sensitive like he says. You're not too sensitive. And the fact that he's amazing sometimes doesn't erase the fact that he's cruel other times. That's part of the pattern. The highs make you crave his approval. The lows keep you off balance. It's a cycle. So what do I do? Ujide looked at this young woman, seeing herself so clearly in her face. She wanted to tell her to run. To get out before he destroyed her self-esteem the way he destroyed Ujide's. But she knew from experience that you couldn't force someone to leave. They had to come to that decision themselves. I can't tell you what to do, Ujide said. But I can tell you what I wish someone had told me. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Keep your own money. Maintain your friendships even when he tries to isolate you. And know that if you decide to leave, it won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Did you ever regret leaving? Not even for a second. They talked for 2 hours. Ujide shared resources, gave Kemi Adi's contact information, and offered to be available if she needed support. When they parted, she didn't know if Kemi would leave or stay. That wasn't her decision to make. But a month later, Kemi sent her another email. 3 words, I left him. Ujide smiled and replied, welcome to freedom. Today, 5 years after walking out of that house with a single bag and a shattered heart, Ujide runs a non-profit organization that supports survivors of narcissistic abuse. She trains therapists on how to recognize covert narcissism. She speaks at conferences. She's written a book. But more importantly, she's happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. She's in a relationship with a man named Ton who treats her with respect and kindness. Who apologizes when he's wrong. Who celebrates her successes instead of feeling threatened by them. Who sees her as an equal partner, not a reflection of himself. Sometimes people ask her if she's worried about getting into another relationship with a narcissist. The answer is no. Because now she knows the signs. She knows what red flags to look for. She knows the difference between someone who genuinely loves her and someone who loves the idea of controlling her. But more than that, she knows herself now. She knows her worth. She knows she doesn't need to shrink herself to make someone else comfortable. She knows she deserves to be loved for exactly who she is, quirks and laughter and opinions and all. The journey from that terrified woman standing in a kitchen with broken glass at her feet to the confident, healed woman she is today wasn't linear. There were setbacks. There were days she doubted herself. There were moments she missed the good parts of Ujide and wondered if she'd made a mistake. But she pushed through. With the help of therapy, supportive friends, and a determination to reclaim her life, she did the hard work of healing. And on the other side of that pain was a life more beautiful than she'd ever imagined possible. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel small, that has you constantly walking on eggshells, that leaves you wondering if you're the problem, please hear this, you're not the problem. You deserve better. And better is possible. It won't be easy. Leaving a narcissist is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. They'll try to convince you that you're making a mistake. They'll love bomb you to get you back. They'll play the victim. They'll turn people against you. They'll make you doubt everything. But on the other side of that struggle is freedom. Real, genuine freedom. The freedom to be yourself. The freedom to take up space. The freedom to laugh loudly and make mistakes and have opinions and be imperfect and still be worthy of love. Ujide learned that she didn't need to be perfect to be lovable. She didn't need to walk on eggshells to be safe. She didn't need to shrink herself to make room for someone else's ego. She learned that real love doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth. Real love doesn't punish you for being human. Real love doesn't make you feel like you're losing your mind. And most importantly, she learned that she was strong enough to save herself. That she'd always been strong enough. The strength had been there all along, just buried under years of manipulation and gaslighting and being told she was too sensitive, too emotional, too difficult, too much. She wasn't too much. She was exactly enough. And so are you. The scars from her marriage to Ujide will always be there. Some wounds cut so deep they never fully disappear. But Ujide has learned to see those scars not as marks of shame but as evidence of survival. Proof that she went through hell and came out the other side. She thinks sometimes about the woman she was 5 years ago, standing in that kitchen with wine dripping down the wall, convinced that she was the problem. She wishes she could go back and tell that woman what she knows now. That the way forward would be hard but worth it. That she was stronger than she believed. That better days were coming. But she can't go back. None of us can. All we can do is move forward, carrying our stories with us, using them to light the way for others who are still in the dark. So if you're reading this, or watching this, and you recognize yourself in Ujide's story, please know, you're not alone. There are thousands of us who have been where you are. Who understand the confusion and the pain and the self-doubt. Who know what it's like to love someone who uses that love as a weapon against you. And we're here to tell you that escape is possible. Healing is possible. Happiness is possible. You just have to take the first step. And then another. And another. Until one day you look back and realize you've walked miles away from the person who made you feel worthless, and you've walked straight into a life that feels like home. Ujide is living proof that you can survive narcissistic abuse. That you can heal from it. That you can build a beautiful life on the other side of it. And so can you. Thank you for staying with Ujide's journey until the very end. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, your own experiences, or words of encouragement for anyone who might be going through something similar. And smash that like button to help this story reach more people who need to hear it. Remember, your voice matters, your story matters, and you are not alone. Until next time, stay strong, stay safe, and know that you deserve all the love and peace in the world.